Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Resistance broadcast. I'm John, and allow me to say love is in the air because tomorrow's Valentine's Day, and we're here to talk about romance in Star Wars, the history of romance, and the future of romance in Star Wars. We will see, but that is our main discussion as we get into things today, as we start our 600s. After our 600th episode this past Thursday. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you to everybody who listened to us talk about the news, but also reflect on this podcast. And I feel like we're just getting started. And with me, as always, is James and Lacey. So before we get into any of that stuff, just want to say hi to the both of you. And
hello.
Did you come down from the high of celebrating with our faithful when it came to 600 episodes?
Of course. 600's a lot. It was pretty
It is a lot.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't remember when I joined.
It was probably in the 100s.
Yeah,
like
probably
190 something.
No, I don't think it was that far.
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's closer to like maybe just after 100 or really close to it.
Yeah.
Someone's already writing in the comments exactly what episode it is. It's actually one.
Yeah. I mean, I can look it up now. I have all the old notes and stuff.
What if it was 100 and then it was Lacey's 500th episode?
Yeah. That's true.
I thought you were John. I thought you were going to be like, and here's Lacey and James, and I want to know, how much do you love me?
Well, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to bully you guys into loving me. So listen, here's the deal. We're here to talk about romance in Star Wars, which is a pretty cool thing because it's always been a part of Star Wars. And whether it's things you want to see, things that are happening, animated, live action, Han and Leia probably front and center. I got the Empire poster back there with the fateful Gone with the Wind kiss. But we have a really good show today because we're also doing Will of the Force. So I'm excited about that. We have an awesome pod race coming up from Ryan Waara. But before we do that, just make sure if you haven't yet, we always say this, but our YouTube channel, we are doing a lot of stuff on the channel. We have shorts that we're doing on there. We also have other stuff that we've been reacting to. We did the Willow reviews. We're doing some indie stuff. We'll be talking about indies when that comes out, and other nerdy stuff that we like getting into. So in addition to our podcast, which you can get on all audio apps, and of course our channel, you get all that other fun stuff too. So make sure you go to youtube.com/@theResistanceBroadcast and just subscribe and share it with your fellow friends who like Star Wars and all the other geeky fun stuff that we like to talk about in the world of movies and TV and all that stuff. So in addition to that, our friends at Gentle Giant, we paired with them and they were so generous to offer 20% off all in-stock items. All you have to do, if you like their stuff like this, Mando and Grogu, just go to checkout with your item, pop in resist20 as your code, and you get 20% off. Then also shout out to our friends at weirdbrothers.com. They just did another Star Wars based commercial for their coffees. I don't know that it was for ours, but it was something else. Like I forget what it was. It was. Might have been like even Valentine's Day based actually. Oh, okay. But check them out and pick up a bag of the Resistance Brew. That's our coffee over there. You'd be helping us, them, and veteran charities as well. And beyond that, it's time to talk about Star Wars. So, James, we have Will of the Force, right? Is that what we're doing? For real? Seriously? What?
That's what we're doing.
I fear nothing, for all this, as the Force wills it.
And the first question is going to come from one of our patrons. This one actually is one of our generals, General Var. Is that how we pronounce it?
Evar?
Evar? Go with Evar. Make sure you write
correct us. Yeah.
How's that? Yeah.
I was gonna say I would say Yavar, but
Yavar. Yeah. All right. General Yavar. They wanted to know, will we see Boba Fett and Fennec Shand in season 3 of The Mandalorian? Pretty broad, but pretty exciting. Lacey, I'm going to have you kick this one off. Do you think there's any chance we're getting Boba Fett and Fennec Shand in that 3rd season of The Mandalorian?
First of all, welcome. We're excited to have you in the Resistance. I know you're new. It's so exciting. Second of all, thank you for your question. I think, yes, 100% we're going to see Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. As we know, Book of Boba Fett by Jon Favreau is calling it Mando season 2.5. So I think they're just going to bleed right back into the Mandalorian. And that's why it's gotten a little confusing for people, because it did go from, Mandalorian, this thing with Boba Fett, but then Mando shows up and then it's back to Mandalorian. So I'm going to say yes.
John, do you think the same?
Yeah, I think so. I was having a tough time with this one. But I think it would make sense. One, it looks like they are going back to Tatooine, of course. So we have that happening with the Pelimato.
Again.
Yeah, so we know. Yeah, what do people like worse right now, Tatooine or Palpatine, in terms of coming back? I don't know.
I would go back to Tatooine 66 times over having Palpatine be in something.
Well, Palpatine made his return in Bad Batch again, so there you have that.
I know.
But, yeah.
I know. But that kind of makes sense. That's like having Rogue One without Palpatine mentioned. It's like, of course.
I love both of those. I love Palpatine. I love Tatooine. I love it all. But in terms of this,
one. Now
Boba Fett going to you must choose.
Well, that's Green Goblin, Spider-Man. Now choose.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, me and my best friend say that all the time, so I just like slip it in the conversation.
I do. I always do the Indiana Jones.
Choose.
You have chosen wisely.
Oh.
Or poorly. But
I probably would go Mortal Kombat. Choose your fate.
I forgot what the question was, actually.
It's will Boba Fett and Fennec show up in Mando season 3?
Yeah. I like pretending.
Now I'm just thinking about in college, him taking like a pen and a soda and being like, now choose.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. It's been a weird night.
With the whole Cobb Vanth thing and Boba Fett doesn't really need to be there anymore. I think it makes sense to have them in here to see where that character is going beyond the Book of Boba Fett. Tamara Morrison has not shied away from saying he wants to go back to doing Boba Fett things that people are known for, which is sort of rogue and not locked down to one spot and doing things he's not used to doing. So I think we're going to see.
There's a reason
Boba
they
Fett.
said that at the end of Boba Fett, where he had that whole monologue where he's like, "I'm not meant."
He tossed the fruit to the black chrysanthemum, and he's like, "I'm all set." And then they show Cobb Vanth in the back of the tank, sort of taking over his spot. Yeah. But so I think we're going to see Boba Fett mainly for that reason, and it would make sense if Fennec Shand followed him as opposed to sticking around on Tatooine. So I think they're sort of like this package deal now. So I'm going to say yes.
Yep. Get excited, General Yavar, because we're all three going for yes in this one. I'm assuming you're excited about that. The question is he's like, I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. No, I do. I think Book of Boba Fett season 2 might not happen. It didn't seem super promising. But then I think people are still down with the actors and the characters showing up. So it makes the most sense to just keep them within the Mandalorian world. Especially even cast and crew too, like the people who were working on the show incorporated them into their show first. So everybody wants to work with those actors. So I think it is going to happen. And I think that, as John was saying, that could be the return of Boba Fett in the sort of gray area type Boba Fett. He did his thing and now he's back to what he wants to be. And that can be opposite Mando, who's leading the White Knight thing, let's move on to the next one here. And the question is, will there be a Jabba's Palace set with Jabba at Star Wars Celebration for the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary? John, do you think there will be a Jabba's Palace set?
I think there will be. I think there's something so accessible about Jabba's Palace, and people want to be there because there's so many things to check out, that if they were going to do, because I remember for the Empire one that they didn't end up having, they were setting up all this Hoth stuff and the Hoth Echo base and stuff like that. But I think for Return of the Jedi, if you're going to do one, they can't do the Bright Tree Village. They can't get all these trees.
I thought they were doing the carbon chamber stuff because they had a Han Solo and carbonite. That's the origination of the joke.
Yeah, they had the stuff from Hoth, and then I think they also did have something else. But I think for Jedi, the set, either if you're not doing the Palpatine throne thing on the Death Star, Jabba's Palace, his chair and all the stuff around him, makes the most sense. And they had something sort of like that at Celebration Chicago, but it wasn't an official one. If they went full bore with that thing, people will line up and take photos and like have a lot of fun with that. So I hope so. So I'm going to say yes. And maybe I'm being too positive on today's episode, but there you have it.
Lacey, what do you think?
First of all, our buddies build that stage and they're epic and awesome. Second of all, I hope that they don't put it on the far end of the convention center so you have to walk a long way to go see it. Because in previous years, like Chicago, it was in the center of the show floor, which was awesome because it's like you walked by it to get to other things and you didn't really miss it. And there were all these other kind of builds around it. And I remember there was also in 2015, it might just be the convention center in Anaheim, they had it in the middle with like different ships around as well. Like there was just so much stuff to see. This past year they did have a little bit of that, but I felt like it was just like far away. Like you had to like in a galaxy far away. Far
I've heard that before.
The convention center. However, that being said, there was a Jabba that was making his appearance around different like conventions, kind of like the Roxy, the Rancor that traveled around. And then I think they sold it off at one point to someone. So the question is like, who has it? I would personally love to see Jabba's palace. I think they're going to do the Ewok village. And the reason because with Jabba's palace, you have to have Jabba. Whereas with the Ewok village, you don't necessarily have to have creatures involved. You could just have the set itself. Like if you think about the Mandalorian set that they built, which was like the whole cityscape, they had like Kowakian lizard monkeys in a cage, but you didn't see a bunch of things hanging out. They just had a set. So if you look at Jabba's palace and it's just the empty set without Jabba, it would just look weird to me, especially if you're celebrating Return of the Jedi. So I think they would do the Ewok village and they could do a whole kind of like green lights, make the whole room green and like kind of have like forest sounds playing when they're not on stage and stuff. Like they could make it really cool.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm exactly with Lacey. I think that the Ewoks one probably makes more sense logistically.
Wow.
Whereas
and you have Warwick Davis at the show.
Yeah. The Jabba thing could be a really cool photo op, which somebody will probably have. What also I was thinking too would be neat about this when the question was posed. If they are embracing the VR thing as they have the last couple times, it could be a really cool station where you go in, you put the VR on and you walk all around the palace and it's empty, but maybe there's aliens and other things, but you can kind of spend a few minutes to explore the palace in VR. And that would be like that installation. Because I would be more excited about that than exploring the Ewok village and having Jabba be
Endor speeder bikes VR.
I mean, but that's a game. Then you're
that's the other thing. You could have speeder bikes around. Like you could have the Death Star off in the distance, hanging from the ceiling. Like there's just more to the Ewok village than there is.
You could build the antenna and then like have like the head of an AT-AT like below it. And stuff.
Yeah, that would be sick.
What if they just
take notes?
What if they just
right now?
They're like, it's already long planned.
Like, no, one of them. One of them's like good idea, and the other one's like horrible idea.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they should do? They should uproot the actual redwood trees.
Oh my God!
California.
Shut up.
Ship them over, and then just put them like a Christmas tree. Just put them right there, and then when you're done, just throw them away.
I think that's the dumbest thing you've ever said on this show.
Do you think I'm serious?
No, but I still think you saying it is dumb.
Thank you. That's very
the
nice.
Best thing I've ever said is we have another
601, baby.
Up here.
601. Here we are.
Another one of our questions from a patron. This one's coming from General Count Pepto. 2 questions from generals. That's awesome.
Well, I didn't do that, Yuvar.
Luke.
Will we see Mando without his helmet on in season 3? And if so, will it be more than previous seasons? Lacey, you get to go first on this one. Is Din Djarin doing more face reveals this season than he ever has?
I was so surprised when they first of all, great question, Count Pepto, which is still hilarious that your name is Count Pepto. I was just thinking quickly in my head. I was like, okay, first season we saw his face once, and that was a surprise because all 3 of us thought he would never take his helmet off. Season 2, he took his helmet off twice. Once to get into the base to scan his face, and then once at the end for Grogu. Will he do it again? I think that's an obvious yes,
That
because they
second
want to
one
show.
was a long time too, or the first one.
Yes.
Wait, sorry.
He
The
sits at
second one
that table
of
with Bill Burr. Yeah, it was epic.
that one. Yeah. That was a long.
Yeah, so I think yes, he will take it off in season 3. The question is he going to do it more than twice? I'm going to say no. But I think the times we will see him with his helmet off, it's going to be with Grogu. I think he's going to be like casual in his ship without the helmet on. Yeah. That's what I think.
All right. John?
This is a really tricky one, but I mean, the odds are more in favor of him taking his helmet off. Like,
you don't hide Pedro's face.
For just a little bit versus not at all. So I say, yes, he will take his helmet off. I don't think it will be a lot because by all accounts, he was filming The Last of Us while they were filming The Mandalorian. And did I take your point?
A little bit, slightly.
Oh, sorry. Well, I told you got to start some of these on your. You going first. You know
I just bounce it back.
But so I think there was more than past seasons, even like even going back to like season 1. Because I think season 2 he was on set more than he was season 1. I think this is going back to more season 1 style. I don't think he was there a lot. So I think maybe there's like they got him for an important scene or something like that, and he does it once to prove like I don't believe in your leave your helmet on thing or whatever, you know, or something like that. But he'll take it off because you just got to have those scenes sometimes. And every time he did it, it was a very important, emotional, impactful scene. And I think this season seems like it's going to be even more dramatic and bigger, and the stakes are higher. So I think he definitely will. I just don't think as much as in like season 2.
My sort of joke was that it was going to be between The Last of Us and the Mario Kart show, the gritty remake Mario Kart.
Yes,
that was so funny.
Too much going on.
A lot going on.
Yeah, no, I think 3 is probably too many. Lacey brings up it's got to be more than 2, and I think 3 is probably too many. I would kind of be surprised, since we're leading into this season, that he wants to revamp himself with the armor and say, I want to get it back. I want to commit myself again to the helmet thing and all this. It just doesn't seem like he's going to be casually taking it off more and more and more.
That's a good point. The armor was like, yo, you took your helmet off. He's like, psych, I won't do it again. And then he's going to turn around and do it 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah. I promise I won't. And then he just goes like immediately outside, like helmet off. So I think probably 2 or less in season 3. Last question though. Will The Mandalorian season 3 match or exceed the Rotten Tomatoes scores of seasons 1 and 2? Now to keep you guys, there he is. Take your helmet off, Din.
I gotta say, Hasbro, real side note, that helmet is one of the best things they've ever made.
It looks awesome. It looks like it could 100% be the real one.
Yeah.
Like prop in this
I have
video.
it right here. It is so good.
It's dangerous.
The question, just to revamp you, is will Mandalorian season 3 match or exceed the Rotten Tomatoes scores of Mando's seasons 1 and 2? Mando season 1 having 93 critics and 92 audience. Mandalorian season 2 having 93 critics and 91 audience. Pretty high scores. If you want me to start, I think that it will actually, because what I know about
which will it? You didn't say which.
It will exceed the scores of seasons 1 and 2.
Both. You're saying
both? Yeah. Well, I mean, they're so close; they're almost identical.
Yeah.
I think that the hardest thing the Mandalorian had to do was deliver on season 2, and when it did it, then that was like, people were bought in. You know, season 1 was good, but if season 2 sucks, I'm over the show. But when season 2 landed, you made your diehard fans, and you made the people who were like, even if season 3 wasn't really that great, they're going to argue for it, and they're going to give it the scores, the high scores and stuff. I really do think that season 3, and it's from the same people, they're not handing it off. I think it's all part of the story. And even if you're looking at Rebels, like as a counterpart for, they did 4 seasons. Like I think season 3 was like probably the weakest, maybe, but I think that was the beginning of when people really started to like say this show is amazing, you know, kind of thing. So I'm passing it off to John on this one. What do you think?
At first, I was going to say no, but I just have this feeling that, you know why I say that?
By the way, audio people, he has a Mando helmet on.
Yeah. So the reason why I say that is because I feel like there's been this weird, and we've talked about this, post-Andor, like, slinging mud at Mando for some reason. But I think that's going to dissipate. And for some reason, I just think this season is going to be... It's going to solve the problems people had with the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which is like, oh, it didn't feel as grand or big or whatever. I just think it's going to hit everything that people love it. It's going to take it to a new level. And for the people who had some issues with it, they're going to be like, oh, that's what I've been waiting for. So I think, I'm with you, James. Both scores will be a tick higher for season 3 of The Mandalorian.
You too, Lacey?
Oh God, I can't.
He had to do it.
How's that Hello Greedo guy? He must have fans in that friggin' helmet that guy's always
All
wearing.
the 501st people have fans and microphones. In their helmets. I think it will easily exceed the Rotten Tomato scores of previous seasons. I think they know the season's going to be bigger and better than ever. Season 1 was amazing, but they were definitely doing it by a certain budget and unsure of how it was going to deliver. Season 2, they had the pressure of like, okay, we got to do this again. Season 3, I think their budget is probably bigger and better than ever, and Disney has allowed them to do whatever they want because they've proven themselves. So I'm going to say yes, the story's just heating up. We're getting to like a really cool place where we don't know where it's going to go. And I think critics are really going to love that. And just by the way we've seen trailers go so far, I think both those scores are going to go crazy. I think the audience score is going to be higher.
All right. Yeah, all good in that regard. I don't think any of us said that it was going to be lower or go downhill. But to be fair, come on, guys. If that's a 90 critics and a 90 audience, it's still awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing
That's a huge success. So,
I agree with John, though. There seems to be this weird thing online where people are like, well, it's not as good as blank. And I'm like, you could just say it's good.
Yeah.
It's not to be compared.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up Will of the Force this week, and I'm going to send it back over to Lacey to take us into the next section.
All right, guys, it's time for the Patreon pod race. All right, there are lots of ways you can support us. You can like this video, subscribe on YouTube, please, as we're building back our audience there. It's a brand new channel. I know a lot of people have been like, where'd you guys go? We're here. We're just in a different place, different location. You can follow us on all our social channels at TRB Podcast. It's one name now, super convenient to find us, or on any of the audio platforms like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We really appreciate all your reviews. It means a lot to us because it lets us know how we're doing, as well as finding new people to grow the audience and just let people know that we're here and talk about Star Wars. So that's great. But if you want more than that, you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast, starting at just $5 a month. That's it, $5. I know things are crazy, but it's less than eggs. So there's that. $5 a month. You can be a part of our and talk about Star Wars with us, and it's such a good group. You also get live streams with us, Discord server access, some mailings sometimes, and much, much more. So this is the part of the show that we let our generals and spice runners take part. So we ask them a question, and they give us their answer, and we discuss. But before that, I do want to thank those people. So thank you to our generals: CARMELO, John RISI, JETTA Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, DANI, Mike Mori, Matt Heath, Brandon McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Paul Sullivan, Aaron Ellington, Diana Yavar, we just heard from, and back again, Micah Harrison. How's it going, Micah? Thank you guys so much. And to our Spice Runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Ryan Waara, Dave Hornak, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
They need a salute. We don't have a salute for them. You don't. I always think like, is it like a this or like
I do with this.
a
I don't know, that's what I do.
Poe when
It's
he
like a
goes
hat
like
tip.
this or something to your Zori? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh, for
All
Spice
right.
Runners?
Yeah, like what
Do this.
what do they do? That's pretty good.
We're not doing that.
Audio.
Hey, Ryan,
listeners,
you're
head over
up.
to
Ryan
YouTube.
Waara.
Yeah.
Ryan, your question was, if you could have dinner with any deceased real-life person affiliated with Star Wars, who would it be and why? What a great question. Ryan, take it away.
Hey, Base. Great question this week. Had to think about it for a while. I think the obvious answer for me would be Carrie Fisher. She is widely regarded as just a lovely person, brilliant, hilarious, very witty, and I love witty people. So I think that would be really exciting. Of course, she did a lot of work behind the scenes with scripts on other films that are not Star Wars that are very popular. So it'd be really cool to listen to what she has to say about that. Secondly, though, I think Irvin Kershner would be a really interesting one to sit down with, given that he was taking over for George after the biggest movie of all time had come out to direct the sequel. A lot of pressure there. Of course, there's the big secret, too. What was that like, keeping that secret of Vader being Luke's father? Spoiler alert. From everybody involved in the film. I think that'd be a really interesting story to hear him talk about firsthand. So thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me participate this week, and we'll see you around.
Awesome job, Ryan. Your setup is pretty legit. If you could just take all of that and put it behind me, I think I would have an even more legit setup, especially all that Rey stuff back there. You got Rey from Rise of Skywalker. You got her lightsaber. Like, I'll take those two. But John, what did you think?
I think he has that looked like one of the AT-ATs from Scarif in Rogue One. That like the brown door on it.
Yeah,
I didn't even know they made that. That's
if you're an
cool.
audio person, definitely just go to the YouTube just to see his background. It's pretty legit.
Yeah, I think like this is the obvious choice, being Carrie Fisher, no doubt, but nonetheless the best choice, because you don't know what you're going to get in that dinner. Like, whereas some other people, you're like, I'm going to ask him about this, and I'm going to ask Al Guinness, like, did you really not like Star Wars? And he'd be like, no, I did. I made a lot of money. But with like Carrie Fisher, she might just start a conversation about anything, and it's going to be the most interesting thing you've ever heard in your life. And I always like wish I had a chance to hang out with Carrie Fisher and not be like, oh, there's Carrie Fisher. Let me take a picture with her for $500. It's no, I would love to just like be like at her house and like having glasses of wine with her or something. Just her in her element with her dog, Gary, and stuff. And like, that would be such an amazing experience. That would probably be a life-changing thing because she's such a brilliant person and very like creative and funny. So I think you nailed it right in the head. And then of course, you threw out the Irvin Kershner one, like, best Star Wars movie ever director. So and you make a good point. Like, he had to follow up George Lucas's massive success, and that wasn't a guarantee then, the way we look back on it now. So great job all around, Ryan, as always. I'm not sure if you're going to Celebration or not. My bad for not knowing that. But whether you are or not, I can't wait to hang again soon. Great job, and I'll see you in the chats and all the other stuff too, man. Appreciate it, man.
James?
Yeah, it's a solid answer. In fact, like, I don't know what other ones I would go with. It's such a good answer. I think if given between the two, I mean, Carrie is Carrie, right? But I was so caught off by the Kershner answer that I was like, man, that's a pretty good one. It's like it's one of those things where you have Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and both movies often get pushed off as George Lucas directed them, kind of thing. So it's even one of those situations where if you are gonna brag about it, you'd be like, oh, because I know a lot about Star Wars because I had with this person, and it's like, well, he directed the best Star Wars movie, Empire. You can keep on with that, but you would never win if somebody just said I had dinner with Carrie Fisher. You would lose that argument because it's just the prime choice. So it's a solid one. I like all your reasonings. Again, everybody said your background's great. And everything you got going for you, Ryan. Thank you for being a patron.
Ryan, this is personally my answer. Like John said, I think a lot of people's answer would be her, but she definitely would be my answer. She's someone that like I saw in passing, and I was like close at events and stuff to her, but never actually got to have the conversation. And I feel like she's definitely one of the like those big regrets that I have in life that you look back on and you're like, oh, I should have just said something. So as a piece of advice to people listening, like just take the moment because you never know when you're not going to get it. Because it was one of those things that I was like, oh, next time I'm going to get a picture with her. It was after like
me with Bob Iger.
Yeah, but that's a little different because Bob Iger is happily living and
I know, but I'll probably never see him again. That was 2 inches from Bob Iger's face.
I know, but I think Carrie had more of an effect on my life than Bob Iger's had on yours personally. Maybe.
Well, he has time to redeem himself.
Okay, well, anyway, yeah, so I can't stress enough how perfect she would be to have dinner with. You know she's getting apps with you. Like, you know she's not going to be like, oh, I'm just getting a salad. You're getting apps. You're getting salad. You're getting an entree and a dessert. She's the one that's like, order the drink. Let's go. Let's have some fun. It would be a great, great dinner that you'd walk away with. Like,
and
really
Gary's
good
probably
life
at dinner.
advice. Gary went everywhere with her, so I would say,
Yeah.
he'd probably be sitting in a high chair next to you. Like,
he's right at the table. Yeah.
Right I'd be okay with it. But Ryan, great answer. We love having you in the community and having you on the show. Thanks so much. And now we're gonna go back to John.
All right, it is time for this week's discussion.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
All right, the history and future of romance in Star Wars. We're doing it, folks. Happy early Valentine's Day to everyone. And if you hate Valentine's Day, I sincerely apologize.
I hate Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the biggest Valentine's Day guy either, but, you know, I still believe in love. So a scoundrel and a princess.
How corny.
You got it out for me today. You called me dumb and you called me corny. Somehow I'm the one who picks on people around here.
Said, I believe in love.
Who doesn't love love?
Oh my god. I can't believe you just said that.
Can I do the intro? All right. You got a scoundrel and a princess. That same scoundrel and his first love. A Twi'lek pilot and a human Jedi. The chosen one and a peaceful leader. An evil prince and a nobody from the desert to some. Those are some examples of romance, or at least attempted romance, depending on who you ask, in Star Wars. With Valentine's Day tomorrow, what better time than now to discuss the history of romance in the franchise, how it's been executed, and what the future may hold for love in a galaxy far, far away. So I just figured we could just have a chat about it. I know it's like it's been an integral part of Star Wars, obviously, from the original trilogy with Han and Leia, which sort of started initially as like this what was supposed to be a love triangle between Han, Luke, and Leia, and then George Lucas is like, you know what, they're siblings, never mind. But Han and Leia out of the gate, and I think a lot of people, if you did a poll, we may have already done a poll on Patreon, like 80% would say that's the best one so far in Star Wars. But then you got, you know, all the other ones that I just listed without naming the characters. But I want to talk about that stuff and what it means to those stories, but also like where Star Wars could potentially go in the future, because I know I think, Lacey, you had brought up like you feel like it's lagging a bit. So that's something we can. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it depends, because I know there's some of the books that had it, like Lost Stars, and you have Hera and Kanan, and there's stuff there. But I see what you're saying in terms of like that big live action stuff. So in terms of the history, you know, Han and Leia out of the gate. Why don't we just start there? Is Star Wars like empty if that doesn't happen? Like, let's picture the original trilogy with no romance and no like that sort of love. I feel like it would feel almost vapid and quite empty if it was just they're just friends and they're. And that
there's
sort of
no
thing.
risk.
Yeah,
there's no risk if Han Solo gets taken if they don't love each other. Like, there's nothing that, I mean, it would matter to Chewie, obviously, but there's no stake in the game if she doesn't admit that she loves him and they don't have some type of affection towards each other. And plus, it's the classic story of like enemies to lovers, the rich girl with the poor scoundrel kid, you know. Yeah,
and it changed Han too for the better, because he was, you know, because of the Kira stuff, and we can get into that and everything that happened to Han before all this. Right. He was a very selfish, self-centered, egotistical, jaded person, and you know, Luke, and then of course Leia and his feelings for Leia like really brought him back to who he was when we first met him in Solo. You know, he
Mhm.
was more believing in people and wanting to have that. So I think in so many ways, you know, you're right. The risk, it's important to the storytelling, especially in Empire Strikes Back. Lacey, I think it's an excellent point. And then also, I just think it's important to Han and Leia, of course, but Han, because Leia seemed like with the most unwavering of the characters. Like she was like she knew who she was from one, and she was like the rock. Whereas Luke went through his journey of becoming a Jedi, and Han had to go through this thing of realizing that he cared about other people. So
Yeah, but at the
I think
same time, she's a character that was even more so where you would see a normal kind of male character in a movie like this, where they don't want to express their feelings and they don't want to have any emotions.
Oh
And
yeah,
she was
guard up.
always that
Yeah,
character,
yeah.
which is an interesting swap of what you normally see. Like you obviously usually see the woman that's like, "Oh, please love me, I want to be the guy,"
Right.
and then that it's the other way around.
Mhm.
So you see Leia, who you're saying is like, you know, very herself, but at the same time, she's not, because she's starting to admit that she has feelings for someone that wouldn't even cross her radar. And then now she's in a relationship and she's doing things that she would never do to risk missions and to risk bigger things for the fight that she's on for this man.
They were both stubborn, which was weird, and that was almost like the cool element of the pairing, was that neither one of them wanted to give an inch to admit it, sort of, especially in that the early Hoth scenes when he was like challenging her by saying I'm leaving, and he wanted to get her reaction, and then she chases after him and he's like, got her, I got her, you know.
And
it still makes me mad that they cut the scene out where she's arguing with him and Harrison just picks her up and puts her down. It's like a cut scene where they cut it out, but it's just so funny because she's so little. So it's like he picks her up, moves her, and then she's still just fighting him, just yelling at him.
I was going to say too, and it's also good to point out that a lot of this back and forth tension plays out in comics that they've released since Disney's purchased. As they did the mainline Star Wars for a long time, it followed Luke, Han, and Leia on a bunch of adventures. And during that time, there was a bunch of give and take between Han and Leia. In a lot of cases where Leia is saying like, "Oh, the rebellion kind of relies on this, but if I don't do it, you know, then Han will suffer for this reason, and I have to choose Han in this case because I think that's the better choice because we need him and all this stuff." But it plays on that same stuff that happened in like, I want you to stay because you're a natural leader, you know, and it's like, no, you want me to stay because you care about me, you know. They did a lot of that, and they played in that within the comics. But again, that's buried. I mean, most people aren't seeing that stuff in today's age, along with the books as well. I'll catalog that all in one thing. And you know, I was kind of looking at this list. I'm like, I was trying to write down everything that's like live action and animated, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty one-sided that things are not romantic, with original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and Rebels having clear romance in their shows.
Yeah.
And sequel trilogy, Mandalorian, Rogue One, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Boba Fett, Resistance, Clone Wars, and The Bad Batch all clearly not having it. And then somewhere in the middle, sort of Solo, and maybe potentially Andor, the little bit of the big stuff. But it's like, that's the best you got.
Bix, and then Mon Mothma's sister. What's her name? Oh my god, I'm blanking right now.
Vel,
yeah, her relationship.
Yeah.
But
I don't remember.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
But I completely agree. I mean, Solo, even then, it's like this tragic love. It's not a happy ending love.
Oh,
and
yeah, brutal.
I don't know. I think my problem with Star Wars romance is like, I'm all for like a tragic romance. It's like one of those things that everybody kind of gets into from time to time. But it just seems like Star Wars romance is always tragic. Like it never ends in a good spot. So I'm always like, can we just have like, I don't know, like a happy ending, like an Indiana Jones type ending, or I don't know, James Bond kind of, I guess, but where he kind of finds someone else or is like still happy at the end.
James Bond is, I don't think he's the biggest romance guy, but I see what
but he has romance in every movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't look at like ones that follow the storyline, if you just look at every one of them, he ends up with the girl. They ride off into the sunset or whatever.
And that's one of the reasons I think people really love Han too, is like he is this like kind of scoundrel with swagger, but he did get the girl in the end. And I think a lot of people do really love that there was romance involved in the original trilogy because it makes it that much more relatable. It's not just about space anymore. It's about people and relationships and love. And at the end of the day, all of us as human beings want to find belonging. We want to be loved. We want to love other people. So I don't understand why this basic thing that all humans want and need is not included in most recent Star Wars, where I think, James, you made the argument recently that sometimes we misinterpret what it could be hopeful. I find that when someone loves someone, that is hopeful. That's despite all odds, you care for this person. And I feel like sometimes that's just missing from Star Wars. We get paternal love. We get family love. But we're never getting romantic love. Yeah, and I think that's why you see so many people shipping things, because they never get anything. So they're like, I'm just going to make this up.
Yeah, and that's fair, because, George Lucas tried to make this a very like traditional and classic fairy tale fantasy story, even though it takes place in space, it's not a science fiction movie by any stretch. It's all the classic elements of a fantasy story are there, and romance is always a big part of that, then you have
let's not forget the first story is go save the princess. And
exactly.
He throws a rope up, picks her up, and they jump across a gap. Yeah, come on, where's that in Mando?
Right. It was now that I think about it, it's like I feel like Shrek ripped off A New Hope, but we'll talk about that later. And then you got the prequels, Darth Vader happens because of romantic love. But in a bad way, because he became so obsessed and the fear of abandonment and losing that love that it drove him to being evil. And so it's like, I don't think it was executed well at all in the prequels in terms of the chemistry between the characters. Anakin and Padme, that could have been so much better.
I think seemed very unbelievable that she was just
wooden.
Nah.
It was wooden. Yeah. The dialogue was wooden. It was I'm picturing George Lucas like a 55-year-old nerd trying to write this romance dialogue.
But I wanted it though. The idea of it is very epic, and
we needed
kind of
he's like that. It's like a scar that hasn't gone away. That's it. Nailed it. Yeah.
And then she stabs the fruit floating through the
all
air.
I ask, because I feel like people are going to jump on us and say no, it is romantic. All I'm going to ask you is, I know that it's Star Wars and I know it's, fictional, and there's a little bit of it's in a fictional world, Lacey, it's not real. I get that. But think about it for 1 second. If anyone you were dating, married to, in a relationship with, said any of the things Anakin said to you, on a first date, if someone said that to you, you'd probably be like, you know what? I'm going to get the check. Some of the stuff he says is just real weird.
I mean, you just made fun of me for just saying I believe in love.
I'm just saying it was funny because the way you said it, because you said oh, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I believe in love. It was just very funny to me. So,
but and I don't want to harp too much on it's been ad nauseum talked about, that the dialogue was a little rough and the chemistry wasn't really there, and it should have been.
I don't think it's been fully explored. No.
That's the ultimate relationship that kicks off that whole saga, all of that stuff. I think they did the best they could, and I'll leave it at that. But
I think the photo shoots they did were more romantic than the scenes we got. The epic photo shoots they did to promote the movie are
the Vanity Fair.
Are super romantic.
Oh, what's her name? Gabby. What's her name? She always does the best photo shoots. That's why. Leibowitz. I forget what her name is.
Annie Leibowitz.
Annie Leibowitz. Yeah. I mean, she'll make.
But they're in a flowery meadow, and you're I remember seeing them being oh my gosh, so romantic. And then the scenes themselves, you're
yeah.
I don't mind the scenes themselves being not romantic, because at the core of the story they are romantic. The point is that the romance was there. The characters went through this.
The story, yes.
All the other things that we're talking about here don't even include that element at all.
I know. Yeah.
And I think that Star Wars can be plenty of things that isn't romance, but it is one of those things when you go back and look at it, you're would you say that romance is a big part of Star Wars? You're yeah, of course, because you think of like, the sequel or the prequels in the original trilogy, and then you're just like, but look at this slate, and you're like, oh man, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just weird because none of
Yeah.
this stuff have it in it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything, but like maybe in some ways that's part of the reason that Rebels did succeed as a show, because people connected with those characters in that story. Even though that ends
yeah.
in tragedy still.
But they were like the parents of the Ghost Crew,
Mhm.
Hera and Kanan, and Ezra needed that because he wasn't with his family, and that all makes sense. It all fits into that mold. So I get that, and I think that was done really well too.
They weren't like playing games with it, like Kanan was in a love triangle with these two people or anything
but
like
it was
that.
I
was
think
just
people
love
waiting
at
for
the
it.
core.
Yeah.
This is the story. This is what love is supposed to be. And even though it ended the way that it did, it still is like that was pure love.
Yeah. And they had the son together, which is cool,
Yeah, I just don't think I feel like oftentimes people push it aside as like, oh, well, we don't need it in the story for it to be a good story. Of course you don't. But it's one of those things that if you're in situations that our Star Wars characters are in, where they're either isolated for a really long time or finding connection with other people or going into risky situations that you might die, you're telling me no one in those situations is ever going to be like, you know what? I'm going to admit that I might have feelings for this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's just a little crazy to me. So like a perfect example would probably be Pirates of the Caribbean is like a perfectly done romance to me. Like that's not an amazingly happy ending. It ends in kind of a tragic way, but also happy-ish. But like Elizabeth Swann and Will are like a perfect romance, and they have this epic sweeping romance, but with comedy, with an adventure, with villains, with all this stuff that like I think is perfectly done, and I just want to see that done in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I think Han and Leia had that. So
I'm saying in the new films. I'm not touching the original trilogy
today. Yeah, now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so then we had the prequel trilogy where it's like the love made things worse for the two of them. Original trilogy, I think we're saying like it made both of them better.
Yeah.
And then now you move forward.
Did it though? Sorry, I'm making a joke. The sequel trilogy ends up that they.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Moving to that. So like original trilogy, we could talk about Kylo Ren, Rey, that whole thing, the Reylo thing. I'm not afraid to say it anymore. But it's like they danced around it too much, where it's like JJ didn't really set it up at all, and then Ryan.
They should have committed.
Ryan then took it and ran with it, but then he had her like shut him off, and then JJ was like, "I'm not sure what to do with this now," and he's like, "I'll just have them kiss as a compromise," and they either go all in or do nothing. That's what
That's how I felt about it. Is I was like, don't have them kiss and then kill him immediately after. Maybe don't do that. Like maybe either have him go full bad or have him go full good and have the romance happen. Like it felt like a compromise, like you just said. Like it felt like they were trying, but they didn't want to give everybody everything they want.
And the same thing with the Finn and Rose thing. It's like that ends with a kiss, and they had them spend the whole movie together, but that wasn't really there. But then
she was like, I'm getting a phone call, so I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah.
And it was just very weird.
And yeah, it just seemed like that chemistry wasn't there either, though. And it's just like and I honestly think, even though it doesn't end well for them, the best since Han and Leia is Han and Kira.
Han is a romantic guy. He's got a lot of love to give.
The beginning of that movie is like Titanic. They're these two kids who absolutely are head over heels in love with each other, crazy about each other.
The scene where she's banging.
Yes.
Like,
and he's like,
are we talking about Titanic again?
Yeah. Oh my God, Titanic. Did you guys, side note, did you see? What? Did I skip? Did I miss something?
You said the scene where she's banging.
And going like this?
Different
kind of.
Audio listeners, I was banging on the screen.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is accurate. Anyway, Titanic, I don't know if you guys saw this. James Cameron, for the 25th anniversary, which, oh my God, 25th anniversary, did experiments to see if Jack and Rose could be on the door. And he did 4 different experiments with like stunt doubles and stuff. And 3 out of the 4, he survived on that door. So then it cuts to James Cameron, and he's just like, I guess he could have survived, but I like to think that Jack would have sacrificed himself. And it's like, okay, but you just admitted he would have survived. Anyway, I thought it was very funny.
Well, the tragedy of that movie
and showed that it couldn't be done. I don't know.
The tragedy of that movie is that she goes on and lives this whole life, has a family, has a husband, and then when she dies, she thinks of that idiot she met on a boat for a week, not her husband.
I know, the husband of the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, like James Cameron, who's had 17 wives, it probably makes sense that he had that end that way. But anyway, we're not here to roast James Cameron.
The fact that she was living her whole life just to be like, I'm coming back, Jack.
I know.
That's why The Notebook is so great, because of exactly how it ends.
The Notebook, yeah. But Star Wars
loves The Notebook. Fun fact.
Star Wars has such little romance right now that we're talking about movies from 25 years ago.
All right, the point I was making about pirates is that's the exact type of romance I would like to see translated into Star Wars. And the only one that we've seen that's come close is Kira, which is crazy to me because
she's a pirate.
No. You wouldn't have even known that movie had romance because they didn't advertise it at all or talk about it at all or have anything to do with it, to the point that James didn't think they were going to kiss, and they kissed in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that was a mistake. And I remember talking to Clayton Sandell about that, and when we were when it first came out, and he's like, they should have pushed that in the marketing. And he's like, they felt like they were afraid to show Han. And all that stuff is real. If you look at those trailers, like there was trepidation for some reason. The whole thing, we'll get into that. We've talked about the whole thing with the Solo marketing was awful. But
just more of that, more making out in coat closets.
Yeah, that romance. Yeah, that romance was legit in that movie, and the chemistry was on point.
That kiss was legit.
They were all their kisses in that movie. The beginning, when they get reunited, when she just taps him on the shoulder and he turns around, and all he can think of is to grab her and hold her as tight as he can when they're on the first light. That is love. And his whole purpose was, I'm going to get a ship and go back to Corellia. And people are like, you want to go back to Corellia? And he's like, yeah, for her and only her. And the worst place in his life, he wants to go back to it just for her. So if you look at Solo close enough, there's a lot of love in there. It doesn't end well because she turns on him. But it's all there, especially from his perspective.
She turns on him to save him, but yes.
I mean, she turns on him to turn on him, but she makes an excuse so that he can get away and not get killed. That's how I see it. But
yeah.
She has her commitments. She can't get out of it. In other words, she didn't have a choice. Really.
Yeah, I think she still loves Han at the end of the movie. She's not like sucker.
No.
Yeah.
No, she's not.
She's in the window just like.
But you guys were talking about the chemistry. It's almost a little bit surprising that you didn't see like a TMZ article like, oh, they've started dating,
right? They're good
after
actors.
that movie.
Oh, the actors. Yeah,
they're good.
Yeah.
You're right, James, because oftentimes if people are really good, it ends up they start dating and then something goes terribly wrong, and you're like, well, they still have the movie.
They would have broken up by now, but for a little while after the movie, I could see.
Yeah. Did Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen didn't date, right? None of that happened?
No.
I don't think so. No.
I know Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher had a little thing for a little bit while they were doing the movie, I think, but that was it.
I think Carrie Fisher and everybody around her did in the movie.
I don't know.
That was a joke.
Yeah.
That was a joke she made. No, but her and Harrison did have a thing. She admitted that in her book.
Yeah. And they stayed good friends, though. They stayed good friends, though, I believe. Like they were always like, it was never one of those like things where there was a falling out. They always like were still.
You know why? He seems like a very genuine person. And every
interview, a chill dude.
He's probably like, chill dude. She's probably like, look, this isn't working. He's like, okay, cool. You want to go get pizza? Like it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care.
Yeah. So in terms of the future, we're all like buzzing, and we talked about this on Thursday about are movies like really going to be the push now for Star Wars, and you got to imagine that it's going to be a part of the future of Star Wars. Now, how they do it, if it's going to be traditionally or if they're going to try to think of new ways to introduce it, I'm not sure, but I think we all would agree, no matter what you're looking for romance in Star Wars, that it has to be a part of it. because it does, like, that's the part of the sequel trilogy that just seems empty. How I said the original trilogy would feel if it wasn't there. And I love the sequel trilogy. You know, I know a lot of people take jabs at it. I really do enjoy it, and I think that is the missing element to it. So I think they are cognizant of that, and we've talked about, like, what could they do to learn from the mistakes they made with the sequel trilogy, which is write a cohesive story. And nothing needs cohesion more than a well thought out journey of love between two characters. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something they're going to be cognizant of. And I think we are going to get that rectified in whatever happens in the future of Star Wars movies. But I think I just don't know if, like, they do one-off movies, like, if they're going to be like, there's going to be a romance in that one and that's it, and there's going to be a different romance in that one and that's the end of that story, or are they going to give us another, like, series of movies where characters
let's
can
say they
develop
move forward. Yeah, let's say they move forward with a Rey-centric story. Does Rey, like, break the Jedi thing and say,
I hope so, man.
Be
Like,
romantic.
I think that's pretty much been said, that, like, she's not going the Jedi path, but she's making it her own.
yeah.
That's what I took away from the movies, was that, like, she was like, yes, I'm following it, but I'm also making it my own path.
Yeah, and who knows if the Jedi, ancient Jedi texts line up with what the Jedi Order was doing during the prequel times. Like, we've seen, you know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but, you know, churches change the meaning of things and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Like, and like Lacey's saying, like, there may not even be a code that she needs to live by. And I hope not, because Jedi are freaking boring, man. They're boring. I love them. I think, you know, they're the heroes of the galaxy, but they're like monks. And I think Rey she deserves it, man. Come on.
You
and if she's gonna be
you can't look at the character Rey, where she was isolated pretty much her entire life, and think that she doesn't want to be loved and be a part of a relationship and eventually have a family. You can't look at that character and say, oh, she doesn't want to be a mom at some point.
I like
100%.
the Jedi the way they are.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Jedi. I'm saying Rey in particular, I can't see that character staying alone for the rest of her life like Luke.
Yeah.
I think Luke has shown her that's not the path she wants, whether it's a Jedi or on her own.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, we're not going to talk about Mara Jade. Thank you very much.
I don't really have anything to say about Mara Jade. I know people
I don't
really
have
like
anything
her,
either. I just think it's funny that George Lucas,
and I know she's come up from time to time here and there, and, like, people make mention of her. And there's always rumors like she's gonna show up. Like, everybody thought Kerry Russell was gonna be Mara Jade. Remember, they were like photoshopping her hair red.
Tinge of red hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think of Mara Jade as, like, this really weird relationship that Luke was in for a while. Like, it's like everybody around him's like, oh, I'm so happy for you and Mara, but then, like, behind closed doors, he's like, she tried to kill him and, like, all this other stuff. You know, like, it's like, I don't know why he likes her. Like, if I were him, I would leave. She's crazy. Like,
she was really hot.
I don't know her
that
whole
was really
story, but, like,
isn't that what, that's why George
like
Lucas didn't like it? Like, buxom and too sexy and stuff, and he was, like, really annoyed by that whole thing.
I still think.
Well, I'm saying, like, that's
he sticks to his idea of what the Jedi are supposed to be, which is kind of how I see him. And I just
That's
don't
fair.
think
and
I'm not part of that. And they try to change that.
You know, if people are down with those legend stories, like, love them, man. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying, like, I'm just poking fun because of, like, how George Lucas was so apparently passionate against it. But so what do you guys think? Like, I know we keep talking Rey, but, you know, we're getting a lot of, you know, there's shows coming out like The Acolyte. You know, there's shows, you know, Skeleton Crew. I know it's about kids. I don't know, like Stranger Things, they have the kids, like, getting together and, like, the sweet little, like, elementary romance and, like, first love and stuff, maybe. But then you have Ahsoka. They can expand upon things there with characters. So there's stuff on the table now that we may get that. But then there's also,
I think we
like,
talked about Sabine and Ezra, didn't we, for Ahsoka?
I think that makes the most sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think the way they left Rebels, I think the way they left Rebels and him saying, like, you know, come and find me, or you'll know what it means when you figure it out, or whatever. And then he disappears, and then they show her being like, I finally figured out after all these years, my mission is to go find this guy, you know?
Yeah, and she's been thinking about him this whole time. Yeah, it's romantic.
It's just so, it's, even if they don't set it up, it's just a complete missed opportunity, because I don't think anybody right now is going, God, I hope those two don't end up together.
Right.
You know, and it's like I don't really see what benefit
We're like, we'll
there
take
would be.
anything. Please, Dave Filoni.
How the story could be so much better that they don't end up together.
Oh.
It's like if they do, good.
Right.
That's
right.
fine. That's totally fine.
And let's not forget, Lucasfilm is on it. John Kasdan with Willow, between Kit and Jade. That was that was fully realized from scene 1 of that show. So they're not.
They had
it's
some
not like
hot scenes in there.
I'll tell you, but that wasn't one of those like, will they, won't they? They were like, no, bang, right away. They like each other.
Even from the first scene, you got a vibe. Like before she even kissed him.
Yeah,
there was multiple too. There were, with Borman, and then there was
Borman, I feel like just was. I don't want to say the word, but he liked everybody.
He did.
But
but there's the other one too, Alora.
I got around. I'll just say that.
Graydon.
Oh my God! Yes, I love
Graydon.
them.
That's the long-term love story, I think.
Yeah. So Lucasfilm's like, they're not like, there's not this secret thing where they're like, we hate love,
No.
Obviously not. So I think the future movies, we're going to get a big dose of that. It's just a matter of maybe it'll just be new characters or something. Like Rey, yeah, sure, I want to see that too. I think something just fell on my desk. Sorry. See, there's so much love.
He's getting
going
so
around.
excited. I want to see that too. Crash.
Yeah. No, I think my son was jumping.
I think you have a
bed.
poltergeist.
Anyway, someone doesn't like love in my basement. A ghost here somewhere. But anyway, you see what I'm saying? Like, I do want that for Rey, but also like if it's new characters and we get to start fresh, that's cool too. So I think we are going to get it. So it's it's clear that the history is there for Star Wars in romance. But with the open slate happening after Episode 9, sky's the limit on what they can do, and we've seen what they've done with recent shows that aren't Star Wars with Willow. But let's bring some of that into Star Wars a bit more and see where we go, right?
Yeah. And side note, a recent movie that's been compared to Star Wars, Top Gun Maverick. Good thing they left the romance out of that movie. Jeez.
What is that joke?
I thought you were going to say.
Is it very clearly like, you have a huge box office hit that everybody loves that has romance in it.
Oh,
it's
yeah. I was actually I thought you were going to say, James, to kind of finish up this conversation, but that you were going to bring up Rebel Moon with Zack Snyder, because
we talk a lot about this, and how do you know so much about it?
Because I'm paying attention to everything that's going
like
on.
2 pictures and like one person like turning their head, and you're like, it's gonna be romantic. It looks so good.
Okay,
like,
well, first of all, I know it's
gonna
be romantic because
all this stuff.
Netflix put out a save the date teaser reel, and they put a bunch of clips in there, and in the clips was the main character girl kissing another guy. Like they have a kiss in the thing.
Lacey's the Stefan of Rebel Moon for us. Rebel Moon, you're gonna love it.
Everything. It's got guns. It's got kissing. It's got a desert.
Aliens.
He's wearing
it's
brown
got creatures.
clothes.
He doesn't always do one celebrity.
Spaceships.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So he's always like Danny DeVito.
Guns and shoes and DJ Jazzy Jeff. Whatever. Like.
There you go. All right.
Comes out, it sucks. I'm gonna be so disappointed.
I mean, it might.
It won't. See. It can't.
We're gonna get a whole new fan base. All right. So thank you to everybody for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. We really appreciate it. Whether you are new to the podcast or been with us for a long time, 600 episodes is a huge deal. But here's to the next 600. Hopefully. So we'll see where we head. But I hope you enjoy this conversation. This episode was a lot of fun, and I'm sure there's going to be more to talk about as more relationships are introduced to us in Star Wars. So let us know what you think in the comments, or hit us up on social media or wherever. And thank you. And again, like we've been saying, make sure you're subscribed on all the platforms. Rate us if you can, 5 stars. We would appreciate that so much. And keep those subs going on the channel. If we can get to 2,000 subs before Celebration, that'd be pretty cool on YouTube. So let's try to do that. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We just did an episode with a lot of romance from the movie Roadhouse, classic, 1989. All right, Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran.
James?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Myra Trunks. And also, I've not mentioned this, but you can find me on the channel every Wednesday doing Bad Batch Reaction Show. So if you're into that, come over and check after you watch the episodes, because it's all spoiler. Go and check out Bad Batch Reaction Show and see what I have to say. But make sure you comment and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I've been digging the season, gotta say. All right, we will see you Thursday. We are going live once again Thursday night. So we hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids, and happy Valentine's Day. Maybe.